Lesson 3.1, Chemistry and Properties of Matter. Our guiding questions: describe the branch of science known as chemistry, answer the question, what is matter, and describe various properties of matter, including its mass, volume, density, state of matter, and chemical composition. So what is chemistry? Some people would say chemistry is the study of chemical reactions that is involved in chemistry, but that's not what chemistry is. Chemistry is the physical science that studies matter and substances and how the matter changes. And so molecules don't have to be reacting for us to study them and call that chemistry. We want to know what is stuff made of and how does that stuff change. That is chemistry. So here is a baseball, and the question was, what is matter? Matter is any substance that has mass and takes up space. So if it has mass and it has a volume, it's made of matter. Almost everything is made of matter. Here to prove it, the baseball has a mass. If you put it on the scale, the average mass of a real baseball is 142 to 149 grams, and it has a real volume, so 203 cubic centimeters is the average volume or size of a baseball. The next part is describe various properties of matter, including its mass, volume, density, state of matter, and chemical composition. So those are all ways that we can describe matter. If we have a substance, we should be able to describe all of those things about it, and I'll show you that example in a minute. First, its mass. That is how much matter is in the substance or the object, and that is measured in grams or kilograms. We use a scale to do that. Next is volume. That's how much space it takes up, and that can be measured in liters or milliliters or cubic centimeters. We can use a graduated cylinder for that, or if we know its measurements and it's a normal shape like a cube, you can just use a ruler to measure that. If we know the mass and we know the volume, we can find the density. So if you take mass divided by volume, that tells you the density or how much mass per unit of volume that is. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a second. The next property of matter isn't a measurement, but it's a way to describe the matter. And so it's the state of matter. So it's how are the molecules in that matter moving, if it's a solid, liquid, or a gas. So here you see the solid, they're all tightly packed together. They're not really moving a whole lot. In the liquid, they're moving some. They change shape with the container, but they're still they still stick together a little bit. They're just moving more. And then in a gas, they're moving everywhere. And if the container's open, they're gonna go free because it's a gas. And then the third property of matter, it's what is the matter made of? What are the atoms in it? And so we do need to understand that all matter is made of atoms. That's the smallest unit of an element. And we'll talk a little bit more about what's the difference between an atom and an element later. But just know that everything is made up of atoms. And here's a little model of an atom. And this goes together. The chemical composition is a property of matter. So what is it made of? What are the elements that make up that matter? That is a property of the matter. And we'll talk about that a lot more later. So here's the density example. We have two objects. They have the same volume, but on the teeter-totter, the one with the more mass is lower. And so this would be a high density object. This one has low density. Again, they're the same volume, but different mass. So there's different density. How you find it, this is review. Density equals mass divided by volume. So if you have a rock, it has a mass of 12 grams, a volume of 2 milliliters. If you do the mass divided by the volume, it tells you that this rock has a density of 6 grams per milliliter. So in every 1 milliliter, it's 6 grams of mass. We've also talked a little bit, okay, here's the unit. So whatever your unit of mass is, that's the unit of volume that you would use. So if it could be grams per milliliter, it could be grams per cubic centimeter. Next is density columns. We didn't make one this year. We might make one later. But basically, it's a tube that you can put different liquids or even solids in, and they will move in that column based on their density. And so here you see this dice. The dice is further down, so it's more dense than milk or dish soap, but it's not as dense as the corn syrup or the honey, which is at the bottom. And so that just shows the relative density. You don't actually have to calculate the density. You can just say, hey, looking at this, the milk must be more dense than the water. Okay, so here's how all this looks. Say I have a marble, and you should be able to describe all of those things. So you can use a scale and find its mass. You can use the displacement method where you put water in a graduated cylinder, you add the marble, it changes, you can find its volume. You can use the equation to find the density. So we've done mass, volume, density. Next is the state of matter. How would you describe that? It is a solid. And then finally, the chemical composition. You might not know this, but it's probably made of glass. Most marbles are made of glass, which if we look up or we do some research, silicon dioxide is gas. So, it's glass. So we just described the marble by using all of those different properties. And that's kind of what you need to be able to do after this lesson is completed.